Welcome to the Dogman Show. I'm your old pal Bigfoot. Today we've got an allegedly true story of a family back in the 20th century who captured two upright canids and attempted to tame them to be family pets. This episode is a short one, but don't worry, we'll be back to longer shows starting tomorrow. I'm going to tell you the first part of the story here today in this video, but there is a finale that I'm going to have to save for the members only episode on our other channel. It gets dark in that part. Too dark for this channel. So let's jump straight into the strange tale that we're calling My Family Held Two Dogmen Captive. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I come from a really weird family. Everyone is an eccentric, to say the least. Each of us has a story to tell, and it's always an odd one. Some of us live in haunted houses. Others of us claim to be lifelong abductees of space aliens. Some of us are so weird that we believe what we're told by TV. The only relatives I've got who are normal and fit well into society are non-binary individuals who won't talk to me because I'm really dumb about remembering their pronouns. These people all work in prestigious institutions and look down on the rest of the family, but unlike them, the rest of us are just plain weird. The world calls us what we are: oddballs. Perhaps the oddest story I'm aware of in my family history happened on my Uncle Fritzy's side of the clan. Uncle Fritzy's great-grandfather, I think, or maybe he was a great-great-uncle or something, was this guy back in the early part of the 20th century who we can call Herschel. Now, Herschel claimed to have captured two young upright dogs and attempted to tame them. Are there any pictures of this? No. Is there any proof at all besides the family story? Of course not. Herschel didn't alert the press because he didn't think it was any big deal. After all, they were just dogs who walked like humans. Who would care about that, right? Like I said, Herschel was weird. This weird man was already in his 50s when the story took place. He had 3 adult sons, all of whom had their own wives and children and houses, because that's what people did back in the 20th century. They had jobs that afforded them to live with self-respect. You don't have to take my word for it. You can look this up. In fact, I urge you to look up as many things as possible. It helps you to figure out for yourself what's real and what's not in life. Of course, you can't look up my weird great-great-great-uncle or cousin Herschel, because that weirdo left almost nothing behind except his house when he left this world, and that, the house, was torn down to put up a parking lot. Herschel was not a hunting man, but he went along on a hunt with some men who were. The story was that they were hunting a deer when 4 or 5 upright walking wolf-like dogs, all different sizes, challenged them for their kill, trying to drive them off. Supposedly the dogs seemed to know what their rifles were for, and the pack of them ran up from the sides and behind, ambushing the men, knocking their firearms from their hands before proceeding to separate the hunters from their deer. There proceeded to be a hand-to-claw battle between them all, with the men finding themselves outmatched by the canines. Then, enter my weird relative Herschel. He grabbed one of the Dogman youth and ran off with him. I believe it must have been the size of a small or mid-sized house pet of a dog, and Herschel simply did not want to see him get hurt in battle. As he ran to the car, with the dog squealing in his arms, he had to endure the puppy's siblings snapping at his heels and racing along with him. The adult dogmen were apparently too preoccupied with fighting the hunters, and it's unclear if they were even aware of what was happening with Herschel. He tossed both dogs into the back seat and drove off out of there like a madman. Like I said, Herschel was no hunter. He could not bear to see an animal suffer, and so he stole 2 Dogman offspring. When the word Dogman is used in this story by my family, I'm not absolutely certain what exactly that means. It does seem to mean upright and bipedal, that part I'm pretty sure about. What else the creatures look like, I was never clearly told. That having been said, I do think that they must have mainly looked and acted like dogs, otherwise even a weirdo like Herschel wouldn't have thought about bringing them home with him. What I'm trying to say is, I don't think these were werewolf-type creatures. I think these were dogs that walked upright. Around Herschel, the two dogs, both boys, acted playful and friendly. They seemed to accept him as an alpha immediately. Maybe he had some food in his car that he shared with them or something. I wasn't given much detail on that part of the story. When he brought them into the house, however, they went for his wife's throat, seeing her as prey for whatever reason. It was all he could do to get them confined to a room and get the door closed. If Herschel were a wise man, he'd have gotten a clue and taken them back to the woods right away and released them, but Herschel was related to me, so instead he went out and bought 2 big dog cages for them. He was determined that he was going to tame them through love and devotion, and that they would come to accept his wife and others in time. I can't imagine that she was too happy about any of this. At first, both of the dogs were kept in the house, but they constantly tried to get out, and they were never calm. Whenever they saw or smelled his wife, they would fly into a fearsome berserker rage, and Herschel was concerned that they might hurt themselves. Now, a normal person would have been worried that they might hurt his wife, but nobody in my family is normal. Once Herschel moved the dogs outside, they seemed to relax a bit more, and he began to train them. First, he attempted to teach them fetch. Tossing the ball toward the woods, Herschel saw that they had a normal canine reaction. They went chasing after the ball. Unfortunately, whichever of the youthful dog men, or let's call them dog teens, got to the ball first, got jumped by the other dog. The two would fight so fiercely over possession of the ball that Herschel decided that it wasn't worth continuing. He got in contact with a dog obedience school and tried to ingratiate himself with the main instructor. His hope was that he could get some advice, or maybe get the instructor interested enough to maybe do some obedience training for free. Again, this is another trait of a number of members of my family. The dog instructor supposedly came out to the house to meet the 2 dogs, but he reportedly left the place in tears. The expert told Herschel that those were wild dogs, and they were beyond being trainable. He told them that they needed to be let go back into the forest where he had snatched them from. Herschel was a hard-headed man, however, and he still felt that these dogs were destined to become his own personal, friendly, and lovable family pets. Herschel bought a book on dog training, or found one in a library more likely, and he set about training them. At first, everything went surprisingly well. They were both very smart and learned extremely quickly. The problem was, each time he brought his wife outside to show her how well trained they had become, the 2 dogs would leap for her throat again, and she would need to run back inside. The dogs would behave for Herschel, but they would not behave for anyone else, or even when anyone else was around. Herschel's marriage was on the rocks, and still he had no plans of giving up on the dogs, who he had named Romulus and Remus. At the behest of Herschel's wife, 2 of their sons agreed to come over and check out the situation for themselves. When Herschel brought the 2 young men over to the dog cages out back, the canines began growling, and their hair stood on end. The sons gave the commands Herschel had told them beforehand to give, and he stood with his hands on his son to make it clear that these were 2 alphas, and that they were endorsed by Herschel himself. It didn't matter. Their bonding was to Herschel and Herschel alone. They were either deranged, or else they were just a different kind of animal from an ordinary canine. Over dinner, both sons said this to Herschel. They sided with their mother and against the young strange dogs. Herschel now had 3 members of his family urging him to take these wild dogs back to the woods where he found them before something terrible happened. Herschel disagreed with every notion they presented and was completely inflexible on the subject. And then came a terrible racket from the backyard. The cages were rattling. There was barking. There was whining. And over all of the horrible noise arose a howling unlike any that the family had ever heard before. Fearing that the dogs had gotten out and were menacing a neighbor's pet, or God forbid a neighbor, all 4 of them ran out back to see what was going on. Well, I can't really tell you the rest of the story here on this channel, to be honest. The story is completed, but I've got to put it on our members-only channel. You'll see why when you check it out over there. If you aren't a channel member yet, you can become one easily by clicking the join link under this video. Plus, you can join for as little as 99 cents a month, although you do get more perks if you join at the $3 or $7 or $10 levels, obviously. Hope to see you there. Otherwise, we'll be back with a more normal episode tomorrow right here. Same dog time, same dog channel. Till then.
Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it. You can become a channel member by clicking the join link below. Then you can check our community page to find the links to 10 hours or more of secret, uncensored Dogman stories too wild to be told on this channel. Your other option is to join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. That's Peter's homemade club, where he will personally email you the links as well as occasional secret club messages. You may also be included as an executive producer in a future episode. You have a scary experience you want to tell us about? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com, or else call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LESS-SCARY. The machine cuts off every few minutes, so if you have a long story, please keep calling back and we'll piece it together later on. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.